Welcome to Supply Chain Partners TV and podcast, where we discuss innovative solutions delivered by our members at Supply Chain Partners. Our members can help you to build a high-performing business and supply chain. I'm Dr. Sharon Grant, the founder of Supply Chain Partners. I've worked in the logistics and supply chain management field for over 20 years, and I specialise in strategic supply chain performance management. In today's special episode, we're celebrating CeMAT Australia. And soon we'll be speaking with the Recruitment Hub sponsor of CeMAT Australia, Logistics Executive Group. Supply Chain Partners is proud to be an official industry partner of CeMAT Australia. CeMAT Australia is Australia's leading trade show for intralogistics, robotics and automation, warehousing, supply chain management and materials handling. And this year it is taking place in Sydney from the 25th to the 27th of July 2023 at the Dome, Sydney Olympic Park. Last year, CeMAT Australia was held in Melbourne and attracted over 2,000 attendees and over 70 exhibitors and 40 speakers. This year, 2023, is going to be the biggest edition of CeMAT ever held in Australia. CeMAT Australia attracts a wide variety of professionals within the fields of intralogistics, robotics and automation, technology, warehousing, supply chain management and materials handling. A wide variety of industry sectors is also represented, from e-commerce to manufacturing and from the food industry to resources. The trade show provides you with the opportunity to witness cutting-edge product demonstrations on the show floor. Visitors can also access the Knowledge Theatre, which will offer you insights, inspiration, and practical takeaway solutions to challenges that are facing industry decision makers and frontline professionals in the logistics and warehousing industry. So come along to CeMAT Australia in Sydney this July to discover innovative solutions, to learn from experts and industry practitioners, and to network with your industry peers. You will find all the details regarding CeMAT Australia on their website at cemat.com.au. Let's now introduce our member and the Recruitment Hub sponsor of CeMAT Australia. With us today is Kim Winter, the founder and Group Managing Director of Logistics Executive Group. Logistics Executive Group is a leading supply chain focused management consulting firm delivering whole-of-lifecycle business services. They provide executive search, consulting, coaching and outplacement services. Welcome, Kim. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey Sharon, how are you going? Thanks so much for having me on your show.
In today's special CeMAT Australia episode, we'll be finding out more about Logistics Executive Group, who are the Recruitment Hub sponsor of CeMAT Australia. And later we'll learn about key trends in supply chain and logistics recruitment. So Kim, tell us about your background.
Well, thanks Sharon. So my background stretches back a long way. So a Kiwi, originally from Wellington in New Zealand, been in the logistics business all my life. At a trucking company at the age of 18, was a general manager with Ansett Air Freight. For those who can remember, Ansett is a competitive airline in New Zealand years ago to Air New Zealand for several years, and then moved to Australia with a merchant banking organisation to set up a telco. Set Logistics Executive Group up in 1999. As I say, executive search, recruitment, consulting, executive coaching and outplacement, just in the logistics and supply chain sectors.
That's excellent. That's a significant background. What does the Logistics Executive Group do?
So good question. We set up business in 1999 in Sydney in Australia, and we saw a real demand for specialised recruitment in those days for the logistics and supply chain market. There were a lot of generalist recruiters around, not so much specialisation, expertise in recruitment. So we set up the business there, and then gradually over the following years developed a consulting business as well. Some outplacement services for people who are laying staff off, give them guidance on the way out, and also executive coaching for candidates inside logistics and supply chain companies. So we opened up operations in Singapore and Hong Kong, as well as around Sydney. And then in 2005, I came over here where I'm based today in Dubai, and set up operations here in Dubai as well, in one of the free zones in Dubai. So we've been deploying services across all of those offices and with partners also in Europe and in Africa from that time. And it's been 24 years and it seems like 24 minutes at times. So our service offering really was driven by pull strategy by clients more than anything else. We didn't start out to offer too wide a range of services, but as apart from standard recruitment and executive search, we had clients coming to us for a range of other services, which included coaching and development of staff as well. So as well as attraction and acquisition of talent, it also came about retention as well. And then on occasions, outplacement for companies that were downsizing or resizing. Yeah, we've worked with most of the tier one companies in Australia when we set up in the first 5 years. And then because organizations in the logistics and supply chain world, of course, are global at the tier one level, of course, we were asked to provide support mainly to the recruitment and the consulting side of their businesses throughout Southeast Asia, where we still have an office, Hong Kong. Also, we've got one of our team up in Shanghai as well, and then out here in Dubai. And 20 years ago, of course, the world was a different place. The hubs were still developing in many places, including here in the Middle East. And so there was a huge demand for specialist talent, not so many companies providing that ease of service or the database or the expertise around the type of candidates that companies needed as supply chains and logistics world became more complex.
That's an extensive service offering. So what was the motivation to start Logistics Executive Group?
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. Look, it was very much, myself and my two partners at the time had connections across the logistics and supply chain market from a previous business that I'd helped to build up and sell. And we found that by going to industry events and learning more about the Australian, in those days, supply chain and logistics markets, there was a significant demand for expertise in finding more specialised candidates as logistics and supply chains became more specialised themselves. And we found that this was being, replicated right across the major hubs. Of course, Sydney was a very big operation in those days, and to us, it was a big world in Australia. But as we began to travel offshore to events in Southeast Asia and North Asia in particular, and then up here in the Middle East and Europe, we found that the same challenges and the same demands from clients and customers, companies operating in the logistics and supply chain world, were very much the same as they were in Australia and in New Zealand. So the motivation was there because it was such a globalized world. The push towards globalization was really on in the early 2000s. And we found by finding the right talent for ourselves in these various sites and logistics and supply chain hubs that we could offer the same service. And it was obviously with cultural differences and geopolitical differences, but that was part of the fun for us. I mean, being a Kiwi, it was always enjoyable to be going into new cultures and looking offshore to develop the business. And we found that there was plenty of demand and not so much supply in those days in terms of the expertise that we could offer.
Excellent. So you've set up offices in various cities around the world. Why not just stay in Australia?
Yeah, well, thanks for that. I mean, the reality is that we found that so many of the companies that we were servicing back in those days, tier one and also regional tier two companies, really had similar demands in various cities to what they had in Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. And we had teams in all of those cities around Australia. So it was just a natural progression. The other reason we ended up spreading offshore so quickly from around about 2003 to 2005, where we opened up about 5 cities around the world, was that I was being invited to speak or present at various conferences because we did a lot of research, and we still do that. We have a consulting division here and a research division here for a lot of our consulting business out of the Gulf and the Middle East and Africa. So yeah, I ended up speaking and then ultimately being asked to be the moderator or MC or chair conferences at various cities around the world. So it was really a natural progression. Again, it wasn't really a strategy that we set out with, but as we were brought into other events around the world, we got to make more connections. There was more business flowed, more talent was required. Companies were looking for the same sort of expertise. We were building up one of the world's biggest databases, which we've continued to build for specialist executives, senior and mid-range executives right across the supply chain world. So obviously we could satisfy requirements that were coming up in these various places that we were going to for events.
Thanks for that. Now, you just mentioned that you're the Master of Ceremonies for conferences all around the world. So is being an MC of conferences core to your business model?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, Sharon. It wasn't to begin with, but as this has been a part of our development, and it's been a really great way to meet people, to join and engage and communicate with the various communities around the world, then yeah, it's become a sort of a bolt-on part of what we do. So myself and others in the organisation are regularly asked to attend events, either as an MC or hosting panels and still speaking quite a bit as well. So it has become an integral part of what we do. And of course, we've got Logistics Executive TV as well. So as per this podcast, we're now doing 2 or 3 podcast interviews a week with various people, news and views and interesting leadership and events around the world, finding out what's going on. And we help promote events as part of our community commitment to different organisations all around the world. We will interview and promote that as part of our commitment to the industry. So we really enjoy it. It's become something that we factor in quite significantly into where we're going to be, what clients we're going to meet, what events. And averaging, of course, with COVID, things became really quiet. But prior to that, and now the last year or so, it's been an event every sort of 6 to 8 weeks somewhere in the world. Either usually myself or one of my team will be attending an event as an MC or a partner with that event. We've got events coming up, of course, CeMAT, which we'll talk about in Sydney. Really looking forward to getting back there, as with the Refrigerated Warehouse and Transport Association in Australia last year, through the circuit in Singapore last year, India, Dubai, Europe. So one thing tends to flow into another, and it's a great way to engage with the community.
Thanks, Kim. That's fantastic. Now, you're also the founder of Oasis Africa Australia. So tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, well, this is one of the more passion-related things in the business, I guess. We were asked to deploy from the World Economic Forum in Davos in 2004 when the Asian tsunami struck. We were asked to deploy a team of volunteers up to Sri Lanka during that disaster. So we went up there and we worked there for about 2 or 3 weeks, helping to deploy relief up there on a logistics perspective. And I then was asked to go around the world with the UN and DHL at the time, setting up disaster relief hubs with DHL and the UN. And from there, I ended up in Kenya. Never been to Kenya before, Nairobi. And I was there about 2005, quite by chance, at a conference there with them. And then by chance was invited to go into one of the world's biggest slums in Nairobi called Kibera, about 1 million people in 4 square miles. There were some kids there who needed education, and there was a teacher, but nobody to set up any infrastructure. So I helped out with that, and we set up a charity in the end, registered in Australia. Currently, it's still registered in Australia, Oasis Africa Australia, and we started helping educate kids in the slums there in primary school, and 20 years later we've educated over 8,000 kids both at primary, middle school and high school and university in Nairobi in Kenya, and right across Kenya actually. So we've got a big team who support that. Fellow directors, Karen and Ross Howe, based in Brisbane, managed that operation with us. And yeah, it's been one of those labour of loves where we walked into something and could help out, and it's been something that we're very committed to. Yeah, and Oasis Africa has been an organisation which has been a combination of the support of thousands of individuals across the supply chain from 2005, from our original fundraising events every year in Australia. Shout out to a lot of the tier 1 and tier 2 companies that have supported us over the years. We've managed to, educate kids all the way up into university. We have about 30 kids at university every year. And I want to put a shout out to some of the organisations that have been down with us. We've got hundreds of sponsors. So if people want to help sponsor some of the kids, we can organise that. They can contact me, and we'll put you through to some of our team members who will assist with that. But yeah, companies such as Maersk up here in the Middle East have been very generous in providing hundreds of laptops. Astral Aviation from here in Dubai as well came down with us last year. Big team came down from Astral Aviation based in Kenya, the biggest cargo airline in Africa. And Maersk up here in the Middle East, of course, Chris Cook and his team donating hundreds of laptops, which we're going to send some more down this year. And we've got another team trip coming up down there next year. So thanks to all the supporters so far. And if you want to get involved in the supply chain logistics project, by all means, contact me.
That's excellent. Now, you're a global supply chain and logistics talent specialist. What are the key trends in supply chain and logistics recruitment?
Wow, how long is a piece of string? I think, some of the key things that we're seeing at the moment, obviously, is the requirement for expertise around digitization, around technology. I mean, the logistics and supply chain world has been through massive, dramatic change over the last 24 years that we've been in business. A constant drive for efficiency and productivity, the need for resilience, and balanced with that is the significant demand for new talent in, let's face it, what has been seen in the past is not a particularly sexy industry. So competing with all sorts of other sectors, of course, logistics and supply chain, have needed to lift their game right across the board. We've been a partner with many organisations in talent attraction and making sure companies have got good strategies in place to bring the right people on inside the organisation, to bring the acquisition of those people across into the business, and then to also support them through coaching and development inside the businesses. But, every part of supply chain, you only have to look at where the talent shortages are, and the unemployment levels right across most of the Western world are very low at 3 and 4%, and even lower in some places. But, technology, analysts, still right across the board in air, ocean and land, demand for executives that have, a lot of expertise about the understanding of the economy. So people with very strong education and knowledge around digitization and in terms of the understanding of the dynamics of business and how to get priorities achieved inside of a business economically while taking care of the staff and taking care of the ecosystem and the personalities are involved right across the businesses.
Are there any particular groups that are in higher demand than others?
Well, I think obviously one of the key things is making sure that the industry right across logistics and supply chain, which depending on how you measure it is up to 30% of any economy in any country, are making themselves attractive to younger generations coming through. And that's also with younger generations transitioning from other industries. And we've just heard about hundreds of thousands of the last year or so of staff being laid off from the technology space, for example. Now, a lot of those are younger people used to being brought up with devices. They're very technology savvy, the latest generations, of course, and making sure that the industry can attract and companies can attract those sorts of people where there is a high labour supply. And cyclically at the moment, of course, there's been a lot of layoffs, but the logistics and supply chain space has been short of talent in these spaces for a long time. So hopefully there's been quite a transition, and we're seeing that with many of the roles that we focus tend to be on more senior roles and than lower end roles, but we're seeing a lot of talent come through making that transition. Organisations also having strategy to be able to bring and induct those sorts of people into the business with those sorts of qualifications and experiences. But overall, irrespective of age, and of course we're seeing a lot of baby boomers move on to retirement now and moving out of the industry. So overall, we're seeing the need for people who can be agile, who are resilient, who can think through issues. A lot of employers that we work with right across the globe are looking for not so much the technical skills, the attitudinal skills, the soft skills, the leadership skills, people who are not afraid to take a risk. And we work extensively with customers about identifying those sorts of people. Technical skills, maybe there's some baseline requirements for certain applications and certain roles, but overall the predominance very much, and Elon Musk is very much part of this with the way he interviews. It's looking at identifying how people overcome problems, how they think, the ways that they engage, the ways that they work with others. These are the dominant factors of issues that clients are looking for when they're looking to hire people into their business.
Thank you. That's great insight. With CeMAT Australia coming up in July, what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, so it's on the agenda. It's getting closer. I'm really looking forward to heading back to Australia again. I spent best part of 30 years there in Sydney. So look, for me, events, and a couple of the team are coming down, and a couple of the Australian team will be there. Very much looking forward to just re-engaging with colleagues, with clients, with candidates. There'll be back-to-back meetings outside the event, of course. I'm emceeing there, as you did last year. So really looking forward to that. Looking forward to hosting some panels, finding out what the latest thinking is, generating some really interesting discussion. Hopefully not too many arguments, but getting up on the stage and working with people about what the latest trends are, what's happening, getting the latest thought leadership on the big issues which are happening right across intralogistics and technology, right across the supply chain scene and the logistics sector. So yeah, having a lot of fun there. But to me, it's very much about engaging with people and understanding where the trends are happening in the business.
That's excellent. Well, thank you very much, Kim, for joining us today from Logistics Executive Group.
Thanks, Sharon. Really enjoyed being on the show and catching up with you again. And from my perspective, to your members, to your audience, if anybody's got any inquiries or any input that they think I can provide to them, advice, guidance, don't hesitate to contact me. Happy to touch base at any time. The best way to get hold of me is through LinkedIn. So Kim Winter, as you can see, LinkedIn, I hopefully would be number one as an influencer on LinkedIn. We've got about 300,000 followers across our various platforms. Or you can get me on email, so kimw@logisticsexecutive.com. And yeah, happy to engage anytime and really appreciate the opportunity, Sharon.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Well, that concludes today's special episode about CeMAT Australia and key trends in supply chain and logistics recruitment with Logistics Executive Group. Their contact details are provided below. Head on over to CeMAT Australia's website at cemat.com.au, where you can find out more information about this fantastic event. So join us again at Supply Chain Partners TV and podcast, where we meet with our expert members at Supply Chain Partners to discuss key business and supply chain issues, topics and trends, including logistics, supply chain management, technology, and much more. We welcome you to subscribe to the Supply Chain Partners channel, and we look forward to you joining us again in a future episode.